Welcome to Hope for Her, the podcast, a place for women seeking hope, inspiration, and empowerment. My name is Amy Nelson, and I will be your host on a journey of encouragement and enlightenment, reminding you that no matter where you are, there is hope for you. Let's dive into the program. Hey, family. Welcome back. Miss Marsha, here we are on the episode number 3 of our podcast, Hope for Her. Here we are doing
I feel
it.
like it's amazing. Like we're still in shock that it's
Yes,
happening.
yes,
I don't know.
yes.
I
So
don't
I needed you guys to hear the shock as it came out of my mouth as we are here stepping into what God's been asking us to do for a long time. So, in case you don't know, my name is Amy Nelson, and this is my incredible host, Miss Marsha Tate.
Hi, good morning.
And we're so glad that you are here to hang out with us as we talk all things hope, inspiration, and empowerment. Last week, we had the opportunity to dive into mindset because we discussed that where your mind goes, your feet will follow. So it's so important that you're putting in hopeful things, encouragement things, and things of the Lord, keeping your mind on Him.
That's correct. I feel like if you don't have hope and if you're not renewing your mind daily, you let the world take it over, and that's not a good place to go.
No, nobody wants to be hanging out there with all the different voices, the competing voices, when really there's only one voice that matters, and it's the voice of your Savior. So let's hop into this week. We kept telling you guys last week that we had a great and an incredible guest that I was going to interview and just bring some. Trust me, her story is going to bring you not only hope, it's going to bring you inspiration. Let me tell you, she was pregnant at 15. She was married at 16. She is now the incredible mother of 5 remarkable young men, married the father of those children, still spending time with him. She's leading in multiple areas in the church, in the community. She has a story of redemption, hope, and restoration. Guys, please help me welcome our guest, none other than Miss Marsha Tate. Yes, it's you. There you go. See, that's what I'm saying. Pulling all things together. Marsha, number one, I'm just so glad that not only that you're here on the podcast with me, but that you're willing to share your story.
Yeah, it took a long time for me to be able to share my story, but the more I talked about it, the easier it was to share.
Come on.
And so I don't have shame about a lot of the things that I've been through in my life anymore. And so it's not hard. I'll gladly tell.
Yeah, especially when you know that your story is for His glory and then it'll lead someone back to Him. It's all His anyway.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I love about you. So as we get started here, tell me, Marsha, reflecting on the early years of your experiences and how have they influenced your approach to leading in a ministry that even serves young moms where you're serving right now? How has that? Well, I'm getting ahead of myself because I always want to jump into things with the girls. I always want to talk about that. But before you do there, how has, I would say, you living out those experiences, what gave you the hope to not quit? What made you say, I'll keep going, I'll keep showing up, and got you to where you are now?
Well, specifically, I was raised in church. Me and my husband was also. And so we have that foundation. And so I knew that God's plan for me was bigger than anything that anybody else had. And so I always hoped that God was going to swoop in like a white knight and take care of everything and get rid of all the people who hurt me and things like that. And so it's like, as kids, you watch TV and you see those fairy tales and they have these amazing endings. And so for me, that was God, that was Jesus. And so I knew no matter what I was going through, that my story ended with Him. It began and ended with Him. And so even when I was at my lowest low, I had the hope that God was going to turn it around.
So you knew that He would be the hero of your story.
Absolutely.
Wow. That's good. And that's an incredible perspective, especially to survive and come up through a lot of the things that you've been through. Now, reflecting on your early years of marriage, how did you find the strength and the hope for you and Marcus to get married at such a young age? And I'm sure overcome all the naysayers or the people that say, it won't work, it can't work, you're too young. Because your story isn't like everybody else's. Everybody's doesn't end that way, Marsha. It's quite remarkable what God has done in your life. How did you guys overcome that?
So I'm gonna give you the Clip Notes version because we
Okay.
only got 30 minutes for
Yes,
this
ma'am.
show. And so, as a child, I experienced some sexual abuse from the age of 4 to the age of 14. And so, for me, that kind of like consumed my life.
Mm.
And so, outside of home, I had to show up perfect as the person that everybody wanted me to be. But inside the house, I had no control over anything. And so, the only thing I could think to do is like be a mom, or I wanted to have my own kids so that I can do better as an adult. And so,
Mhm.
just being a wife was like one thing that I thought about a lot as a child, and I like always planned my wedding and everything. And so I
Of
just knew
course,
that that's
you're
what I
girly,
wanted and
girly.
that I was going to be a great mom. And that was my only goal, to be honest.
Mm.
That plus be a writer or an artist or something. And so when I met my husband, I was about 11 years old. And it sounds crazy. So when you think about these numbers that Miss Amy gave earlier, I met my husband when I was 11. I didn't like him at the time. I was 11. You. And then I was still going through this abuse and nobody knew what was happening. Nobody in my family at all. Nobody knew. None of my friends or anybody at all. And so when I ran back into my husband at age 14, we kind of sat down and had a conversation. And this particular day, I kind of told him everything that was going on in my life. And so he was the first person who knew what was happening to me. And so he just kind of like subconsciously became my little protector. And then we started dating I was 14 and he was 17. And so I ended up getting pregnant a few months into dating, as much as a 14-year-old can date. So much into our relationship, I got pregnant at 14. We had our first son at age, I was 15, he was 18.
Mm.
And I just knew that I was going to be his wife when we started dating that first day when I
Sure.
was 14. I told him that he was going to be my husband and he laughed in my face.
You're not a planner at all, Marsha.
And so I just knew it, like God laid it on my heart. And so uh, still married to this day. um, I just knew that no matter what the marriage had to work. Like we had to include God. Like I said, he has a Bible foundation or a biblical foundation, so he knew what it was, and he knew what I wanted, even though his head wasn't in that space. And he would follow me anywhere. So uh, he followed me to church. He followed me through everything, and so we've had our ups and downs, but we've been sticking it out and just making it work. And so as long as we keep God at the center of our marriage, then we can't fail.
Yeah. And I'm sure in those early years, I can only imagine the struggle that comes from being young parents
Mhm.
because your children basically raising children. So
Yes.
you know what that's like. You know the struggle, you know the heartache. So you guys basically, it's kind of growing up together.
You know what? That could screw a kid up.
Right?
I think the first year we fed the kids cereal for like 6 months. When we first got our own place, I think I was 19, and our kitchen, we had groceries, but we had about 30 boxes of cereal. We were
Hmm.
children. And
Hmm.
I remember for the first Christmas, I purchased him all the toys that I wanted to play
Of
with.
course, of course,
But
of
it's like
course.
you have to learn what type of parents you want to be and just kind of set that foundation and go from there. And so for most people, they want to be the type of parents that their parents are if they have good parents, or the opposite. And so
Mm.
my husband and I both have had some really uh, colorful parents. I love you, people. They're all still here. And so we know the things that we didn't want to do, and we knew the things that we wanted to do based on how we were raised. And so that's
Okay.
kind of like what shaped
Okay.
how we raised our child. But even as like young parents, it was hard because we were still growing and didn't know ourselves.
Hmm.
And so they say your
Hmm.
brain doesn't develop until you're like 25. And so we out here making
Yes.
choices for a whole life.
Yes.
And then we had our second son when I was 19.
Mhm.
And so we have two lives that we're responsible for. And so it really causes you to grow up quick. However,
That's kind of what I wanted to lead into because I'm sure throughout that journey, were there specific moments or events, Marsha, that tested your hope the most? And if there were, how did you navigate those?
uh, so
Just give me one of those
the
stories.
thing
Yeah, that's
about
something.
society is that when you're not married and you get
Mhm.
into an argument, like you can leave. Somebody can leave. Somebody can leave out the house and walk away, and they don't have to come back. But when you
Mhm.
marry, they don't got it. They don't can't go anywhere. Like
That's
you
right.
can leave, but you got to come back. Like at the
Mhm.
end of the day, this is your home and this is where you lay your head. And so, the one thing that we kind of instituted early on is like from the Bible, you never go to bed angry. And so
Mm.
we, even no matter how much we argue or if we get into anything, we settle it before we go to sleep.
Mm.
And so I think
Mm.
that really helps us a lot.
So that was the hard thing, learning to stay,
Hmm.
not run, because running is easy.
Yeah.
Learning to stay and fix it, fight through it. Because at this point, how long have you guys been married now?
This year, I think makes 28 years.
Wow.
And the thing about it was learning to submit. I think that was my biggest
There you
challenge.
go. There you
So
go.
yeah.
That S word. That'll be fun. That'll be fun. Another podcast, but that S word.
Oh, that's a whole podcast and a therapy session.
And it's not as bad as we think it is.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not. We'll say that for another time. Now, tell me, Marsha, how has your faith um played a role in sustaining and nurturing your hope during the challenging periods of your life? How has your faith?
So before I got married around age 13, 14, I was
Mhm.
very suicidal
Mm.
because at that point it was like nobody in my physical realm was helping me with the issue that I was facing at home.
Mhm.
And when I say at home, my abuse came from a family member who
Mhm.
would often visit or at one point live with us. And so um, even when I would get down to like right before I was gonna do the thing that would unalive me,
Mhm.
I would just think about God's word and it would just flood back in my head. And it was like if I was to
Mm.
do it, then God wouldn't be pleased. Or if I would to do anything that would cause me to not spend eternity with Jesus, I did not
Okay.
want it. And so that was the thing that would always pull me back.
And it's so interesting that you're once again reiterating the importance of having a strong biblical foundation, of
Absolutely.
being raised in the things of God, because I'm hearing you say repeatedly that your Christian background determined a lot of the decisions you made moving on.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And I feel
And
like
helping you get
God
unstuck.
God would always put people in my life that would always lead me for a season and then they would go. And so,
Mm.
whether it be them passing on
Come
or
on.
me moving to a different area, they also played a huge role. And so, that's what like really drives me to be there for moms who are in similar situations.
Mm. Now, you're being a young wife, being a young mother, Marsha, how has those experiences in your life, how have they influenced you to encourage the younger women that are around you now?
One thing, I think that people now in culture, they don't see the value of being married.
That's good.
Granted, marriage is not for
That's
everybody,
good.
but if it is for you and if you are drawn to it, then hold out hope, draw closer to God. God will bring you your person and God will equip you for everything that you need for that marriage. And so, um, I got married when I was 16. And so I
Hmm.
don't recommend anybody get married that young because you really don't know who you are and you're still a child, still developing. But um, if you're older and you know that that's what you want to do, then I think that you shouldn't give up hope just because the dating pool is full of pee, as they
Hmm.
say.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so just hold out hope and continue to put God first, and God will just lay everything out for you.
Yeah, because now I want to say to you here, when was the moment for you, Marsha? I love to ask people this. When was the moment for you? Because I'm not sure you answered it for me directly. That you realized that God was real and He saw Marsha Tate. Yeah, give me. I mean, that one time when you went, wow, I know that I know that I know.
So God would come through earlier in my marriage and would provide when we didn't have things. And
Mm,
so as young parents, it's really hard to kind of sustain like a whole life. And then when we moved to Florida, the cost of living here being like 3 times more than it is from Detroit, where I'm from, God would just come through and like pay bills. And so he every now
mm,
and again he would just show me. At one point, I audibly heard Romans 12:2 just filter through my head. And so it was different little things where God would just kind of show me like that he was there. And so
mm.
now being older, looking back at the different things, I can see where I would ask God for certain things and he would come back through and
Come
answer
on,
it. And
come
then
on.
specifically, I made a list for all the things that I wanted out of my husband. And at the time when I married my husband, he was none of those things. But today, when I think about that list, he is everything that I asked God
Come
for
on,
when I was like
Jesus.
12 years old, before I even met
Mm,
him. And
mm.
so that's when I know that God sees me, he
That's
loves me,
good.
and he is looking out for me.
Now, and that's so cool because you told me earlier what one of your favorite Bible verses is. It's in Psalms 37. And that verse is what?
Delight yourself in the Lord, and he'll
Come
give
on.
you the desires of your heart. And
See?
so over
See?
time, it has evolved because I mentioned on the other podcast how I
Yep.
thought like it was my ticket for getting whatever I wanted from God. And when I realized that the more I delighted myself in the Lord, the more my desires became his
Come
desires.
on.
And so his desire was to like take care of other moms, take care of other people, take care of the babies. Like
Mm.
that's my goal.
And then not only just do that, but even just enjoying being with God,
Yeah.
just being with him. And when we get in alignment with him, he knows what's going to delight your heart.
Yeah.
He knows what's going to make Marsha smile and get all giggly and squeezy and mushy and just skip through the house with an umbrella like it's on a beautiful day, because she really would do that,
I
y'all.
will.
He knows what's going to do that. And that's why when you said that now you look back and Mark is all those things, that's because you put God first.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at
Mm-hmm.
points where we were being selfish and we didn't put God first, because we broke up about twice in this last 28 years, God still kind of like brought us back.
Come
And
on.
so he would remind us like that we weren't being submissive to him. And so
Come on.
when I was the first 3 years of marriage, I want to say I had a problem with submission. I was 21 and we kind of split the first time, right? And so I was really hard headed and I had a real fiery temper. And so
No, not
the
you.
idea of submitting to a man, because culture said we don't submit, we independent women, right? It was like disgusting to me and make me want to vomit if I heard the word submission. And the more I thought about it, is that it wasn't really about my submission to my husband. It was about my submission to God.
Amen.
And being obedient to him. And so when I started doing that, it made it so much easier to submit to my husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could touch on that, but I'm gonna leave it alone because it'll take me somewhere, and I
Yes,
don't
it
want to do
will.
it. I don't want to do it. Now, how do you cultivate and maintain hope in your daily life now? Being a mother of 5, married, helping Mark with all the things, serving in church, running your own companies, leading your own ministry, serving with me. How do you cultivate hope, and how do you keep it going now? Because I'm sure life isn't always up. So how do you cultivate it, and in the times of hardship now?
Constant prayer. The fact that I have 5 sons keeps me at constant
Yes,
prayer.
Lord.
And
Boy, mom.
I pray. I make sure that I have a nice playlist.
Yes.
And then I surround myself with people who I know are gonna like push me to be closer to God and to get more deep into His Word. And so it's my circle, it's the music, it's me cultivating that mindset with the Word of God.
That's
And
good.
so
I like that, Marsha. Now, the question that I would really wanted to get to here is reflecting on your earlier experiences. How have they helped you serve the girls that we minister to now?
So when you're going through situations and you think it's only for then, and you're like, oh my God, what is God doing? And I don't understand this heartache or situation or anything. Fast forward to the future, when you talk to someone, it could be a mom, it could be a friend, it could be a family member, and they start telling you that they're going through something that's very similar to what you've gone through. And then God reminds you of that particular story or season that you went through, and that it's all connected and that it's to be used for His glory. It's better than anything, because it's not like I'm helping people because the stuff that I did and it's me. It's really God allowing situations to happen so that He can allow people to get breakthrough later. And so that gives me more joy than anything. So.
To be able to cultivate those things.
Yeah.
Now, my next question is, I really want to get into this right here, Marsha. Using your own story as a backdrop, what inspired you to even get involved with you moms, to get involved with Hope for Her and all the things we're doing now? Using your what made you do that, to come and step up and serve that Sunday?
So I had I have 3 sisters. I have my mom, and like we're really, really close. And so I know, and then my husband's like amazing. So, and I have him and his family. And so I know that that was my circle. And I knew that if it wasn't for them, I probably would have lost my mind a long time ago.
Come on.
I mean, plus Jesus, but like just in the physical realm, that if I didn't have those people to kind of bounce off of and like keep these kids, or like just kind of step in and give me relief at times, I knew that I wouldn't have made it. It's so much worse now for the girls, because like suicide is like an option. Like they think about suicide often, and the media pushes it. It's crazy. And so I know that like if I was the way that I was 20, 30 years ago, then how is it for them now? And so I just want to be able to just offer an ear to listen, some advice, a little bit, just tiny bit, and to just love on them like how my mom loved on me when I was younger.
And not only that, I'm sure you see so much of yourself or your story in many of them as you sit across from them and have conversations. Because I know you and I have talked many a times when we're meeting with the girl or meeting with the mom or meeting with any female that we've come in contact that God may put in our path. We're looking, going, oh, I know her. Or if she's talking about a guy, oh, I know him. Matter of fact, I used to date him, probably his brother. So let me tell you how that's going to work out. You know what I mean? So we're able to speak into those situations because we've been there, done that, and not so much as to give them us, but to look back and say, I'm in a different place now. Had I allowed God to lead in that space, it would have been so different.
Completely. But it's like even in our rebellion, God forms these stories that we are able
Yeah.
to use later. And so
Yes, he
you
does.
notice the red flags up front. And so when your mom is telling you not to date that guy, and your dad is telling you not to date that guy because he was that guy, like,
Yeah.
listen. When they tell you to stay in school, listen. When they tell you to get that education, listen. And
Yeah.
so follow your heart, but also listen to that wise counsel.
Yeah. Yeah. As we're getting ready to wrap it up, I have two more questions here for my two questions. One, what advice do you give your sons now as they are growing up, to be young men? You're raising them in the things of the Lord, about understanding, respecting, and supporting women that you come into. And two, what would Marsha now tell Marsha 28 years ago? Dear younger me.
Dear
So tell
younger
me
me, I'm
about
gonna
the
go with
sons.
that one first. Dear younger me, submit to God. Submit to
Mm,
him first and fully, and everything else will seem like a piece of cake. And then my advice for my sons, because it's daily, uh, because I have I didn't mention that all my kids are 7 years apart.
yes.
And so everyone is 7 years except for my second son. So I have he'll be 29 in a couple weeks, 29, one that's soon to be 25, a 20, I put my fingers up and it's doing balloons. Wait, 20, 28 right now, 24, 22, 15-year-old, and soon to be
Mm-hmm.
8-year-old. And so I'm just constantly drilling in them that they need to have a relationship with God, because our culture teaches religion first.
Yep.
And I realize that relationship is the way. And because it's about relationships with others, relationships with God. And so have a relationship, talk to him, listen to him every day, and to just be human, like really
Mm.
nice humans where you're not out here hurting people, not doing things on purpose. Just love on people as much as you can. And to just take care of themselves as well, because sometimes we'll put other people ahead of us,
For
and I
sure.
don't ever want them to neglect themselves for the sake of others. And so unless they're like really giving because they love to serve. And
Mhm.
so
Yeah, you do. You got an incredible family, Miss Marsha.
thank
I
you.
love the guys, especially Crispy.
My kissy.
Yes, you're Chrissy. So listen, Marsha, thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your story. Thank you for the different ways that you serve and you allow God to use you, that you take your bubbly nature anywhere. Oh my gosh, when we go into the room, trust me, her personality gets there first. And I love all those things about you. So thank you. Don't stop offering hope. Don't stop telling the girls about the reason for the hope that lies within you.
Mhm.
And that hope is Jesus.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it is. So, listen, as we wrap up today's episode, listen, guys, we want to extend to everyone that's been watching, that's been hanging out with us. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being our guest and riding along with us on this journey. If today's episode has touched you, if you know someone that it might touch, go ahead, share it, pass it along as we continue to drop a little bit of hope here, inspiring you to rise up, be encouraged, and be empowered. Have an incredible week, ladies.